Most people think spiritual awakening is all light and love, gentle meditation, and peaceful enlightenment. But the truth is, every single chosen one must walk through what mystics call the dark night of the soul, a period so intense, so transformative, and so necessary that without it, you cannot fully step into your spiritual power. If you've been going through a period where everything in your life seems to be falling apart, where you feel lost, disconnected, and questioning everything you once believed, then you need to understand something crucial. You're not having a breakdown. You're having a breakthrough. And what I'm about to share with you will completely transform how you understand this sacred passage that every awakened soul must navigate. You see, the dark night of the soul isn't punishment. It's not evidence that you're doing something wrong, or that the universe has abandoned you. It's actually the most important spiritual initiation you'll ever experience. It's your soul's way of preparing you for the profound work you came here to do. And by the end of this video, you'll understand not only why you're going through this, but how to navigate it with grace and emerge stronger than you ever imagined possible. I know how isolating this experience can be. I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning in darkness while everyone around you seems to be living normal, happy lives. If this resonates with you, you're not alone in this. What you're experiencing has been walked by every great spiritual teacher, every mystic, every chosen one throughout history. This is your initiation into your true spiritual power. The dark night of the soul is the universe's way of stripping away everything that isn't authentically you. Everything that's been keeping you small, everything that's preventing you from stepping into your full potential as a spiritual being. It's uncomfortable because it has to be. Transformation requires the death of who you used to be, so that who you're meant to become can be born. Let me share something deeply personal with you that happened to me 3 years ago. Something that at the time felt like the end of my world, but looking back now, I can see was actually the beginning of my true spiritual journey. I was 32 years old, and from the outside, my life looked perfect. I had a successful career, a beautiful home, a relationship that everyone envied, and what most people would consider financial security. But inside, I felt completely empty. Every morning, I'd wake up with this crushing sense of meaninglessness, like I was living someone else's life. Then, within the span of 6 months, everything began to crumble. I lost my job due to company restructuring. My relationship ended when my partner told me they felt like they didn't know who I really was anymore. My health started declining with mysterious symptoms that doctors couldn't explain. My closest friends began to distance themselves because, as one of them put it, I had become too intense and too negative. I remember sitting in my empty apartment one night, surrounded by boxes of belongings I was preparing to sell because I could no longer afford the rent, and thinking, how did I get here? What did I do wrong? Why is everything falling apart when I've tried so hard to do everything right? That night, I experienced what I can only describe as a complete ego death. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about life, about what mattered, just dissolved. I felt like I was floating in this vast, dark void with no reference points, no identity, no sense of who I was or where I was going. But here's what I didn't understand at the time. That void wasn't emptiness, it was infinite potential. That darkness wasn't the absence of light. It was the womb of my spiritual rebirth. Every single thing that was being stripped away from me wasn't being taken away as punishment. It was being removed because it was never truly mine to begin with. I was experiencing what every chosen one must experience, the complete decision of the false self so that the authentic self can emerge. And if you're going through something similar right now, I want you to understand that you're not being destroyed, you're being reborn. Now, let me explain what the dark night of the soul really is, and why every chosen one must walk through this sacred passage. The dark night of the soul is a spiritual purification process that occurs when your soul is ready to shed the layers of conditioning, programming, and false identity that have been keeping you disconnected from your true spiritual nature. It's called a dark night not because it's evil or negative, but because it represents the unknown, the mystery, the void from which all creation emerges. This process typically begins when you've reached a certain level of spiritual awareness, but are still operating from patterns and beliefs that no longer serve your highest good. Your soul recognizes that to fulfill your mission as a chosen one, you need to release everything that's keeping you small, everything that's based in fear, everything that's preventing you from accessing your full spiritual power. The darkness you experience during this time isn't the absence of the divine. It's the presence of the divine in a form that your ego doesn't recognize. You're being held in the cosmic one, being prepared for a level of spiritual birth that requires the complete dissolution of who you thought you were. Stay with me because what comes next will explain why this process is so intense and why it's absolutely necessary for your spiritual evolution. The first stage of the dark night of the soul is what I call the great unraveling. This is when everything in your external world that you've been using to define yourself begins to fall apart. Your career might collapse, relationships might end, your health might decline, your financial security might disappear. It feels like the universe is systematically removing every pillar of stability in your life. But here's what most people don't realize. These external structures weren't actually providing you with real security. They were providing you with the illusion of security. And that illusion was keeping you trapped in a life that wasn't aligned with your soul's purpose. Your higher self orchestrates this unraveling because it knows that as long as you're comfortable in the illusion, you'll never be motivated to seek the truth. I remember talking to David, a member of our community, who went through his dark night when he was 35. He had built what he thought was his dream life, a thriving law practice, a mansion in the suburbs, a trophy wife, 2 kids in private school. But then he started having panic attacks during court proceedings. His marriage began falling apart when his wife accused him of being emotionally unavailable. His children barely knew him because he was always working. Within 2 years, he had lost his practice due to a malpractice suit. His wife had filed for divorce and taken the kids. And he was living in a studio apartment, questioning everything he had ever believed about success, happiness, and what it meant to live a meaningful life. At the time, David thought his life was over. He couldn't understand why everything he had worked so hard to build was crumbling around him. But what he didn't realize was that his soul was liberating him from a life that was slowly killing his spirit. The panic attacks weren't a sign of weakness. They were his soul's way of saying, "This isn't who you really are." If you're in this stage right now, if you're watching your external world fall apart and wondering why the universe seems to be working against you, I want you to understand something. The universe isn't working against you. It's working for you. It's removing everything that isn't authentically aligned with your highest good so that you can build a life that actually reflects your true spiritual nature. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The second stage of the dark night is what I call the identity crisis. This is when you begin to question not just your external circumstances, but your fundamental sense of who you are. The roles you've played, the personality you've constructed, the beliefs you've held. Everything starts to feel foreign and false. During this stage, you might find yourself asking questions like, who am I really underneath all these roles I've been playing? What do I actually believe versus what I was taught to believe? What do I really want versus what I thought I was supposed to want? This identity crisis can be terrifying because the ego's primary job is to maintain a consistent sense of self. When that sense of self begins to dissolve, the ego interprets it as a threat to your very survival. You might experience depression, anxiety, confusion, or a sense of complete disconnection from everything and everyone around you. But here's what's actually happening. Your soul is helping you remember who you were before you learned to be who you thought you should be. You're not losing your identity. You're finding your authentic identity underneath all the layers of conditioning and programming. If you're still watching, you're definitely someone who has experienced or is currently experiencing this profound identity dissolution. And I want you to know that this confusion, this sense of not knowing who you are anymore, is actually a sign that you're making tremendous spiritual progress. The third stage is what I call the spiritual emptiness. This is perhaps the most challenging part of the dark night, because it's when you feel completely disconnected from the divine, from your spiritual practices, from any sense of meaning or purpose. You might find that meditation feels pointless, prayer feels like talking to an empty sky, and all the spiritual concepts that once brought you comfort now feel like empty words. Many people interpret this stage as evidence that they've lost their spiritual connection, that they've somehow failed on their spiritual path. But the opposite is true. This emptiness isn't the absence of the divine. It's the presence of the divine in such a pure form that your conditioned mind can't recognize it. During this stage, you're being asked to surrender your concepts about spirituality, your expectations about how the divine should appear to you, your attachment to specific practices or beliefs. You're being invited into a direct experience of the sacred that transcends all mental constructs and emotional attachments. I went through this stage for almost 8 months. Every spiritual practice that had once brought me peace felt mechanical and meaningless. I couldn't feel the presence of my guides, couldn't sense the energy that had always been so clear to me before. I felt like I was spiritually dead, like whatever connection I had once had to the divine had been severed completely. But what I didn't understand at the time was that I was being prepared for a much deeper, more authentic spiritual connection. All my previous spiritual experiences had been filtered through my ego's expectations and desires. This emptiness was clearing away those filters so that I could experience the divine directly, without the interference of my conditioned mind. Now, here's what most people don't realize about the dark night of the soul. It's not a linear process. You don't move through these stages once, and then you're done. The dark night is cyclical, and you may find yourself moving through different aspects of it multiple times throughout your spiritual journey. Each time you're ready to expand into a new level of spiritual awareness, each time you're being prepared for a new phase of your mission as a chosen one, you may experience another dark night. But here's the beautiful thing. Each subsequent dark night becomes easier to navigate because you begin to recognize it for what it is, a sacred passage, not a punishment. The fourth stage is what I call the surrender. This is when you finally stop fighting the process and begin to trust that there's a deeper intelligence orchestrating your experience. You stop trying to control the outcome, stop trying to rush through the darkness, and begin to allow the transformation to unfold in its own timing. Surrender doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means aligning your will with the will of your higher self, trusting that even though you can't see the bigger picture, there is a bigger picture, and you're being guided through this process with perfect precision. This surrender often comes after you've exhausted yourself trying to fix your situation, trying to get back to the way things were, trying to force your old life to work. When you finally realize that you can't go back, that the only way out is through, that's when true surrender becomes possible. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will completely change how you understand the purpose of this entire process. The dark night of the soul isn't just about personal transformation. It's about preparing you for your role as a spiritual guide and healer for others. Every chosen one must walk through this darkness, because you cannot effectively guide others through their own spiritual challenges unless you've navigated those challenges yourself. Think about it. How could you hold space for someone who's experiencing the dissolution of their identity if you've never experienced the dissolution yourself? How could you offer comfort to someone who feels abandoned by the divine if you've never felt that abandonment? How could you guide someone through their own dark night if you've never learned to find the light within the darkness? Your dark night isn't just about your own spiritual evolution. It's about developing the wisdom, compassion, and spiritual strength that you'll need to serve others who are going through their own awakening process. Every moment of pain you've experienced, every challenge you've overcome, every breakthrough you've achieved becomes a tool in your spiritual toolkit that you can use to help others. This is why the dark night is so thorough, so complete. You're not just being prepared for a comfortable spiritual life. You're being prepared to be a wounded healer, someone who can transform their own pain into medicine for others. The fifth stage is what I call the rebirth. This is when you begin to emerge from the darkness with a completely new understanding of who you are and what you're here to do. You realize that everything you lost during the dark night wasn't actually yours to begin with, and everything you've gained, the wisdom, the compassion, the spiritual strength, is yours forever. During this stage, you begin to see your life from a completely different perspective. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable now appear as opportunities for growth. Relationships that once caused you pain now reveal the lessons they were meant to teach. Experiences that once felt like failures now show themselves as necessary steps on your spiritual path. You also begin to access spiritual gifts and abilities that were dormant before your dark night. Your intuition becomes stronger, your healing abilities more pronounced, your capacity for compassion deeper than you ever imagined possible. You realize that the dark night didn't take anything away from you. It revealed what was always there, underneath the layers of conditioning and fear. But here's what's truly beautiful about this rebirth. You don't emerge as a perfect, enlightened being who never faces challenges again. You emerge as a human being who has learned to dance with both light and darkness, who understands that both are necessary aspects of the spiritual journey. Now, here's where it gets even more profound. The sixth stage is what I call the integration. This is when you learn to live from your authentic self while still functioning in the world. You develop the ability to maintain your spiritual awareness while engaging with practical responsibilities. You learn to be in the world, but not of it. During this stage, you might find that your external life begins to rebuild itself, but in a completely different way than before. The career that emerges aligns with your soul's purpose. The relationships that form are based on authentic connection rather than ego needs. The lifestyle you create reflects your true values rather than society's expectations. This integration process can take years, and it requires patience and self-compassion. You're learning to embody your spiritual insights in practical ways, to translate your inner transformation into outer expression. You're becoming a bridge between the spiritual and material worlds. Fellow chosen ones, I want you to understand something crucial about the dark night of the soul. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something incredibly right. It's evidence that your soul is ready for the next level of spiritual evolution, and that you're being prepared for the important work you came here to do. If you're currently in the darkness, if you're feeling lost and confused and wondering if you'll ever find your way back to the light. I want you to know that you're exactly where you need to be. The darkness isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. The confusion isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of transformation. The emptiness isn't the absence of the divine, it's the presence of the divine in a form that your ego doesn't recognize. But here's what most people don't realize about navigating the dark night. You don't have to do it alone. Throughout history, spiritual communities have recognized the importance of supporting each other through these sacred passages. You need guides who have walked this path before you, fellow travelers who understand what you're experiencing, and practices that can help you maintain your connection to hope even in the deepest darkness. This is why our community exists. This is why those of us who have emerged from our own dark nights feel called to share our experience with others who are still in the depths. We know that the darkness is temporary, that the light is always there even when you can't see it, that this process has a purpose and a destination. Your dark night of the soul is preparing you for something extraordinary. It's developing in you the spiritual strength, wisdom, and compassion that you'll need to fulfill your mission as a chosen one. It's clearing away everything that isn't authentically you so that your true spiritual gifts can emerge. It's teaching you to find the light within the darkness so that you can help others do the same. Every great spiritual teacher throughout history has walked through their own dark night. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness. Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree facing his demons. Every mystic, every saint, every awakened being has had to confront the darkness within themselves and emerge transformed. You're in sacred company. You're walking a path that has been walked by every soul who has ever awakened to their true spiritual nature, and just as they emerged from their darkness with gifts to share with the world, you too will emerge with your own unique medicine to offer humanity. The world needs what you're developing during this dark night. The wisdom you're gaining, the compassion you're cultivating, the spiritual strength you're building. These are not just for you. They're for everyone whose life you'll touch, everyone you'll guide, everyone you'll heal through your own transformed presence. Your time is coming, fellow chosen one. Actually, your time is here. Even in the darkness, even in the confusion, even in the emptiness, you are exactly where you need to be. You are being prepared for something beautiful, something important, something that will make all of this darkness worth it. Remember this: the dark night of the soul isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your true story. It's not the death of who you are. It's the birth of who you're meant to become. It's not evidence that you're lost. It's proof that you're being found by your own authentic self. You have more power than you realize. Even in the darkness, you're exactly where you need to be, even when it doesn't feel that way. And your mission, whatever form it takes, is important to the healing and evolution of our world. Trust the process, fellow chosen one. The darkness is not your destination. It's your passage to the light. And when you emerge, you'll understand that every moment of darkness was worth it for the gift of who you become on the other side. Welcome to your sacred transformation. The dark night of the soul is not your ending, it's your beginning. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. This isn't just a video, it's a calling for the chosen ones like you.